Tim Esch remembered. Two things about the morning. Major Cutler sent her to the back of the rotation. The way she didn't argue, and the way she adjusted the wrap on her shoulder before she stepped out of line. 41 soldiers had drawn for position on the Ridgeback Canyon qualification course. A 4-kilometer mountain run with live fire stations cut into the high-altitude rock belt. The kind of exercise that separated the unit's shooters from its fillers. Major Cutler had walked the line at dawn, clipboard in hand, and when he reached Staff Sergeant Cara Wills, he stopped and looked at the wrapped shoulder for a long moment. "You're not running this course," he said. "Not a question." "I'm cleared, sir." Cutler wrote something on the clipboard. "Cleared for light duty." "This isn't light duty," he moved on. Esch had been 2 positions ahead of her. He was 20 years old and 8 months in unit, and he had done what everyone else did. Sized her up the way Cutler had, glanced at the wrapped shoulder, filed her away as marginal. She was quiet, she was small, she had made no speeches. When Cutler dismissed her to the observation post, she went. She picked up her rifle, adjusted the wrap again, and walked toward the ridge without looking back at the line. The rock slide hit at 0917. It came from the north face, a seam of granite that had been loosening since the last freeze cycle, and it didn't announce itself. One moment the canyon was empty air and the sound of the qualification team moving through the second station, and then the north face came down in a single gray sheet. The draw between stations 2 and 3 filled in seconds. Esch heard the roar, felt the concussion in his chest, and then the dust swallowed the lower canyon entirely. When it settled, 7 soldiers were pinned under a secondary ledge that had shifted on impact. Esch was among them. His left leg was caught under a slab of limestone no larger than a truck hood, which was not large enough to crush it, but more than enough to hold him flat. Around him, 6 others were in varying versions of the same situation, trapped, unhurt enough to think, not mobile enough to matter. Problem was the detonator housing. Every live fire station on Ridgeback Canyon carried a timed charge on its instrumentation rack, a safety protocol designed to disable the course systems in the event of an emergency, so no secondary discharge could occur during a rescue. The rockslide had sheared the primary shutoff conduit on Station 3's rack. The housing was still live. The timer had reset to its emergency default, 4 hours. Esch found this out from Sergeant Del Rey, who was pinned 6 meters to his left and who had eyes on the housing. Del Rey had a radio. The radio was damaged. It could receive but not transmit. So they heard the battalion's traffic. They heard the recovery team assembling at the canyon mouth. They heard the range safety officer's voice confirm that the draw was inaccessible until the north face aftershock risk dropped. 2 hours minimum, before anyone could move into the canyon. They heard, and they could not answer. What they also heard in the 3rd hour, a single burst of static that resolved into a voice. Calm, measured, calling a bearing. Esch couldn't place it at first. The voice was reading coordinates. Not distress, not asking for help. Just reading coordinates to no one, or to everyone, in the flat cadence of a shooter, marking a position. It came through the damaged radio as fragments, but the fragments were consistent. She was calculating something. She was talking herself through it. He didn't know then who it was. He would figure that out later. What he knew in the canyon, in the hours that followed, was the silence. The recovery team held at the mouth. The aftershock risk did not clear on schedule. The second window passed, and then the third. Daylight moved across the thin strip of sky visible above the ledge. Esch watched it and did not panic, because there was nothing panic could do, and because the voice on the radio, appearing every hour or so, still calm, still reading numbers, was doing something that panic could not. The battalion later reconstructed what she had done with those hours. Staff Sergeant Cara Wills had been at the observation post on the ridge lip when the north face came down. The slide had not touched her, but it had taken out the post radio relay and sealed the draw below her. She could see the detonator housing on Station 3's rack from the ridge. She could not reach it. The draw was 200 meters of loose rock below her. The ledge situation was unstable, and she had one fully functional arm. What she had was her rifle, her pack, and 19 hours before the recovery team could safely move into the canyon. The shot was 940 meters through a canyon gap 12 meters wide at its narrowest. The detonator housing was the size of a field radio. The wind in the draw ran in two directions. The low canyon current from the east and the ridge draft from above, and they met in the gap at an angle that changed by the quarter hour. Her shoulder would not allow a standard prone position. She spent 4 hours building a stabilizing frame from her pack's aluminum stays and a length of 550 cord, testing it against the rock face until the rifle sat level and she could acquire the target without loading the injured joint. She spent the next 8 hours reading the wind, not estimating. Reading, marking the mirage boil off the canyon floor, timing the drift of dust motes in the gap, logging the numbers in the small notebook she kept in her left breast pocket. The same notebook the battalion would learn, in which she had logged her cold weather qualification data 18 months earlier. The notebook that held the work behind the record she had set at 24. The youngest woman to complete the mountain warfare sniper course, the only soldier in the unit's history to qualify with a cold weather accuracy mark that still stood on the range board at Fort Kessler. She did not transmit to ask for help. She transmitted to stay sharp, to keep the math moving, to keep her voice from going somewhere it could not come back from. Esh heard those transmissions and did not know what he was hearing. Trained mind, doing the only thing trained minds know how to do when the walls come in. In the 19th hour, she fired once. Esh heard the report, a single crack that rolled off the canyon walls and flattened into silence, and then he heard Del Rey say, very quietly, that the housing light had gone out. The detonator was down. 30 minutes later, the recovery team came into the draw. They brought Wills out last. She walked out, which was the first thing that stopped Major Cutler, cold. He had been standing at the canyon mouth with the battalion commander, Colonel Ardeen, and both men had expected a litter. She was moving carefully, the rifle slung on her good arm, face gray with exhaustion and canyon dust. And she walked, the way she had walked away from the line that morning, without announcement. Cutler started to say something. Ardeen stopped him with one hand. The range instrumentation had already done its work. The recovery team's tablet was live, and the data from Station 3's rack had uploaded the moment the housing went down. Distance confirmed, 940 meters. Wind variable cross-draw in a 12-meter gap. Single round center of the housing, detonator disabled clean. The tablet operator had pulled Wills's service record automatically when the shot registered. A protocol for any unscheduled discharge on the course, and the record had come up the way records like hers always come up, quietly, and then all at once. The mountain warfare sniper qualification, the cold weather accuracy record. 18 months of performance data that no one in the recovery team had thought to ask about. And at the bottom, a call sign that the range board at Fort Kessler still listed beside the top mark in the cold weather column. Rimrock. Colonel Ardeen read it, up, and looked at her for a long moment. Then he walked to her, not the other way around, and he called the field to attention in a voice, carried to the canyon walls. Ridgeback recovery attention. Every soldier in the draw stopped moving. The recovery team, the medics. The 7 men who had been pulled from under the ledge were standing or sitting in the gravel with their gear. All of them turned. Ardeen held her record up, the tablet screen out, and he read it aloud. The qualification, the record, the conditions of the shot she had just fired. The distance, the wind, the improvised stabilizer, the 19 hours. He read her call sign last. He said it clearly. And then he saluted her in the field, the way you salute someone whose file you should have read before the exercise began. Wills returned it, precise. Her good arm only, but precise. Esh was sitting in the gravel 4 meters away, a medic checking his leg, and he watched the whole thing. He had been watching her since she walked out of the draw, Freet. And he had been trying to locate the word for what he'd witnessed, what the canyon had contained for 19 hours without anyone knowing what they had left in it. He found it when Ardeen finished reading the record and the field was still quiet. He got to his feet, leg be damned, and he came to attention on his own. No one ordered it. He just stood. Major Cutler, behind the colonel, had not said another word. He was holding his clipboard. He did not appear to know in that moment what to do with it. Esh did not look at him. He kept his eyes on Wills. The way you look at something you almost lost before you understood what it was worth. The canyon held the silence for a long time. The wind moved through the gap. The mountains did not care either way. But the men who stood in that draw knew, to the last one of them, that the stillness was not emptiness. It was the sound of a debt being recognized, 19 hours too late, and not 1 second too soon.